A lot of the time, society can constrain what it's possible for an individual or a woman to achieve. And I think being surrounded by like-minded, ambitious, successful women shows that actually it is possible. I can go and chase my dream. I can carve out a niche for myself.
Welcome to Don't Step on the Bluebells, the podcast where personal healing and transformation take center stage. I'm your host, Amanda Parker, and I'm a fellow seeker on the journey of personal growth. Join me as I delve into the stories of gifted healers, guides, and everyday people who have experienced remarkable transformations. Listen in as they share their practical wisdom to enrich your everyday life. And don't forget to hit subscribe and never miss a new episode. Welcome to today's episode of Don't Step on the Bluebells. I am here with the truly remarkable badass Angie Vaux, who is the CEO and founder of the Women in Tech Forum and the Women Leaders Forum. And today we are talking all things like women empowerment, female empowerment, and the healing impact that that can have. So I am really excited. I can think of no one else who would be better for this conversation than you, Angie.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I don't think I've been introduced as the badass Angie before, but I love it. I'm going to own that.
To be honest, I'm surprised if that's the case. So I had the honor of meeting you really over the last couple of years. I was a member of your Women Leaders Forum, which was a really beautiful experience, getting to connect with all these really remarkable and inspiring leaders. And when I was thinking about, I always think who I'd love to have a conversation with and to bring these messages out, it really came through clearly that the work that you're doing is somehow so unique. It's this vision that you have for what's actually possible for women in their careers and professional lives. And I really don't see anyone else doing what you're doing. And I find it, having participated both in the forum and some events that you've hosted, it's beautiful, the spaces that you create so that people get to feel empowered and stand in their power. So I'm really excited just to dive in a bit to understand what is it that, what's that vision that you're really working towards and how did you get here? So I'd love if you could just tell people a little bit about, what it is that you're creating, what you're bringing into the world.
So Women in Tech Forum initially started as a passion project back in 2018 to equip women with the skills, the confidence, and the network to break through the glass ceiling and thrive as a woman in a very male-dominated environment. I've always worked in corporate myself. I've had a very long, successful career working for some of the biggest tech brands in the industry. I was very fortunate that, I was, one of the few women on the leadership team, the youngest person in the room, had all these sort of barriers around me, but I was very fortunate to break through those. And I wanted to help and empower other women to do the same. And when Women in Tech Forum was born, it initially started out as just hosting a few events, but it very quickly grew. All of our events sold out, within a few days of the tickets going on sale. So I decided to make the leap from corporate to becoming an entrepreneur and setting up Women in Tech Forum. And when I made that leap, then COVID hit and we had a sold out conference with Facebook back then, now Meta. We had a sold out event with LinkedIn. And I was like, oh no, I was a single mom, 2 children. How am I going to make this work? In spite of, a truly awful situation, we pivoted as a business and created a digital online platform. And that really helped us scale and impact thousands of women, not just in the UK, but also across EMEA and further afield.
Wow, I don't think I've ever heard you tell that story before. So it really, what stands out to me as really beautiful is that it first came with the nudge just to try out a few events, see what happens, give, women the opportunity to connect. And, just watching what was unfolding, there was clearly an appetite. People wanted more. actually, why do you think that is? What do you think people were really craving for, especially in those early days that you were able to fulfill?
I don't really think there were any other companies doing what we were doing at that time. So I think there was a real need to provide a safe space for women to connect. Because women, certainly back then probably represented about 20% of the tech workforce. And then if you look at fields such as engineering, it could be, even less. And if you're a person of color, if you're a woman of color, you might be in, single digit representation. The boys club, and we don't really talk about the boys club anymore, but the boys club, I still think is still very much alive in 2025. And these are networks of people within organizations to the exclusion of people who don't fit that mold. So I really wanted to create a safe space for women to come together and to network and to build those relationships, but also to learn from each other. Because, if you're not part of a club, whether it's a boys' club or something else, you don't hear about the latest promotions. You don't get to network typically with the C-suite, the CEOs, and you don't really get to understand the true sort of, political rhythm of an organization. So by creating these forums, women were able to share, to learn from each other, but also to know that they weren't alone as well in some of the issues that they were experiencing, whether that be within the internal structures of an organization, but also in client-facing roles. It was just really empowering to see the impact that created. And we brought in lots of inspirational female leaders from different tech companies who did manage to break through the glass ceiling, who did manage to pave a way in spite of the sort of structures that were built. Because if we look at sort of a corporate company, traditional corporate structures and companies were built by men for men. And so it's time to sort of redefine, what does an inclusive culture mean? How do you create an inclusive workforce and culture? How do you break down those barriers? How do you have more diverse hiring? So, that's really how our company sort of started, and all the different aspects to Women in Tech Forum developed was from a need from women, but also from forward-thinking companies who wanted to change the sort of stereotypical male-dominated environment.
Yeah, because that's something really interesting about what you continue to build. It's on the one hand, there is this community base for women who are working in tech to be able to grow their careers, to learn and to learn from industry leaders, et cetera. But you also co-host a lot of events and experiences with companies themselves. So how like I guess that's just my curiosity. Like, how does that work, Angie? Like what's happening there with, because that's quite dynamic and really unique. It's not just the community side of things.
Absolutely. So we work with organizations who really want to build their brand as an employer of choice for women and underrepresented groups, and who want to attract more diverse talent. And so we partner with them to really amplify that message to a much broader audience and connect with other amazing women and talent in the industry. And that's something we've done right from the start, not necessarily intentionally, but as with any startup, you learn what the market needs and wants, and you create solutions to meet that demand.
I've always been so amazed at the partnerships that you've created, and they host the space for these conversations. And I guess especially with the trend coming out of my native land, which we don't need to talk about all of that now, but there is this trend and kind of backlash to what some are calling like woke culture, which is really just trying to have more representation of people who are not automatically represented. But it seems that this is still important, especially in the businesses that you're working with, that they still want to bring that forward. Is that a lie that I'm making up?
It's an interesting topic of conversation. It's really disappointing that in 2025 that we are seeing such a reversal on diversity and inclusion. And if you look at the space that I'm in, a lot of companies in our ecosystem are no longer in existence. And this is partly because of that. We are seeing, as at Women in Tech Forum, a big shift in the industry away from diversity inclusion, particularly for American headquartered companies. Not all of them. And it's those companies, we love working with that are really sort of defying what's happening in the world and on the sort of, on a geopolitical level, to really say, actually, we're pressing ahead with this. But it's those companies that continue their commitment to diversity, inclusion, creating that culture of belonging, that will win the war for talent. Because, in the UK in particular, you still have the new generation coming through. They still value companies that focus on sustainability, diversity. So I think it's really important. So the market is constantly shifting. It's literally interesting to see what will happen in the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, and beyond.
It's really fascinating. And I can say, just from my own experience participating like in the Women Leaders Forum, for example, and, having a place to go and connect with others. It took me a while, because it takes me a while to like find my groove and to find that trust. And then once I started showing up to the different meetings, I just felt at home. And it was such a mindset shift for me of, my imposter syndrome kicks in high gear when I'm first starting something new. And I'm like, am I even a leader? And then when I get over that whole inner voice and find myself in that room, the mission of the organization really felt so clear to me, because suddenly I felt like I was surrounded by friends, surrounded by people that I trusted, that I knew, that I felt comfortable with, where I didn't have to pretend to be, someone else. And that just opens up so many connections in a beautiful way. So just having that space to connect with people in different industries, different seniority levels, where you can share what some of your hopes and dreams are, the things you're working on. And they say, oh, wait a minute, I know someone in such and such a company. So from my own perspective, this feels like I can see the healing potential of that. But I'd love to hear from you what is this healing? There's like an undercurrent of healing that happens through the work that you're offering. How do you see that?
So it's about empowering women to realize their dreams and helping them optimize their full potential, whatever that means to them personally, but also to dream big as well. A lot of the time, society can constrain what is possible for an individual or a woman to achieve. And I think being surrounded by like-minded, ambitious, successful women shows that actually it is possible. I can go and chase my dream. I can carve out a niche for myself. And also sort of a space for sharing as well. You mentioned imposter syndrome. Maybe women wouldn't apply for a job because they didn't tick all of the boxes, whereas a man would just go ahead typically and apply for the role. So the more we sort of share those experiences, those thoughts, those things that can potentially hinder us, and that's not just external barriers in society, that's also our own internal barriers. And the more we share and realize actually we're not alone, the more we can encourage and support each other. And you may not have that infrastructure within your organization that you work for. You may not have that safe space. And so by creating that, you're empowering women, and it creates that ripple effect. Then you're sort of, they empower more people. And together we rise, together we elevate ourselves and also human consciousness. Every individual that comes on this journey, and also our allies too, very, very important on this. That's how we can drive true change in society and in the world that we live.
Yeah, it's so powerful just to be in a room with people who you feel like just get you or just accept you. Like that alone, just being able to show up and with whatever the hardship or whatever the goals or the dreams or, whatever might be at the center, and just be welcomed into a space where people say, oh my God, me too. Like I understand. I have found in my own journey that whatever it is that I want to learn, however I want to grow, if I put myself into those rooms with people, I haven't always put myself in the rooms with the experts, I have to be honest. I usually put myself in the rooms with the others who are like trying to figure it out too. But I've learned from that also that it's often better to be in the room with people who have actually done the thing that you want to do. There's a lot more inspiration in that. I'd love to hear from you just how, in all of the work that you do, how do you understand or how do you decide? I don't know if it's you deciding on your own, like what's important to create or what's important to bring in so people have access to.
That's a great question, and it's a combination of different sources of research and information. From the beginning, I've drawn a lot on my own lived experiences as a female leader in the tech industry. I've also had a very international career as well, having spent 12 years in Asia, lived in mainland Europe, spent a lot of time working in North America. I have a lot of lived experiences on, what worked for me, what didn't work, what's needed in the workplace. I also am an executive coach as well. I coach a lot of people. You understand the unique challenges that people face. And then I work with tech companies and other, not just tech, but companies of all sizes to understand what they need and want from their workforce and what the workforce wants from them. So when you can blend all of that knowledge, experience, feedback, insights, then you can create something really powerful that empowers and supports women at every level of their career and every industry sector as well. It's not just limited to tech. Women Leaders Forum, we have lots of different industry sectors represented. And it's also been open to changes as well. We're always very open. We put together a program and a strategy for the upcoming financial year, but we're not afraid to pivot or integrate new things into that strategy, particularly when you look at the geopolitical landscape and how quickly that changes, how quickly tech changes. Being a small organization means we're very nimble and very quick to pivot where we need to. And certainly that's been the case, certainly in the last 12 months. And being able to do that, I think is good for everyone.
And so I know a little bit of your secret history, which is that you're also a healer, have some experience. I don't know if you claim that title, but I would love if you're open to share a bit about that healing experience and healing work that you've explored in your journey as well.
Absolutely. And my healing journey really started, and again, it was very unintentional, when I moved to Asia in 2005 to Singapore. And I've always been very sporty. I used to do a lot of long distance running, to play on the national grounders team. When I moved to Singapore, I don't like running in the heat. So I had to find something else to do. And I also don't like gyms typically. And so I stumbled across a yoga studio. Interesting, it was called Whatever in Chinatown. It doesn't exist anymore. And so I was like, I never really fancied yoga. I just thought it was for old people back then. And I went to an Ashtanga yoga class and I literally couldn't do any of the postures. I could barely touch my knees, let alone my toes. Being a very competitive person, which is also the antithesis of yoga, I kept going back. So I'm not used to not being able to do things to such an extent. So I think much to the frustration of my yoga teacher, I kept going back. And so I built my practice up to sort of, 5 times a week. I could do the primary Ashtanga yoga series. It's a very athletic form of yoga. So it was initially designed for teenage boys in India. And with Ashtanga, it's very spiritual. A lot of meditation, aligning movement with breath work. So then I started going on retreats in Asia. So I go to India, to Bali, to Thailand. And those were very traditional retreats that I went on. And that's when you really got into meditation, the Kriyas, Ayurveda, physiology, the whole sort of eight limbs of yoga. And so from then I decided I wanted to really understand more about yoga. And so I studied to become a yoga instructor. So I did the 350 hours with Yoga Australia whilst I was still working, and I was pregnant with my first child as well. Lots of weekends intensives, which is amazing. And then I started teaching yoga just at weekends at the same studio. And then when I traveled with work, so I used to travel about 20 hours a week of flying time. So literally travel from one end of the earth to the other every week. I used to teach yoga in the offices that I went to. So sunset yoga, in a park or a roof terrace is a great way to connect with other, the leadership team and in the company. And then I decided I wanted to teach yoga full time. So I quit corporate life and taught yoga for a year in Singapore and Malaysia. And then I also trained to be a mindfulness instructor. So I went through the whole meditation training. I did my 500 hours for yoga. I've pretty much got every yoga certification going, sort of prenatal, teens, children, Ashtanga, hot, the list goes on, Hatha. But then I decided that, teaching yoga full time wasn't for me. I enjoyed the intellectual stimulation of being in a corporate world. And then I moved back to the UK and didn't really find my yoga home straight away. But what I did stumble across was something called Theta healing. So again, I was quite intrigued. So then I discovered I've always been quite spiritual. So then I sort of discovered another sort of hidden talent and the ability to, read people and look into the future and the past, or, see challenges that people have got and, use the universal energy to sort of invite healing. I don't really talk about it. First time publicly I'm actually talking about it, but I do stumble across clients and usually they find me. I really enjoy doing it. So it's nice actually because I am able to switch it on and off, which is good because sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming if it's just there the whole time. So it's sort of there on demand.
What I find really fascinating in your journey, and I so appreciate you sharing because I'm learning, like, I feel like I know you, but now I'm just learning so much about you. And I love that you went through the part of your journey that you were really doing like corporate lifestyle, like you were a businesswoman traveling a lot. You brought all of that yoga and almost that more softness into the corporate spaces that you were in. So it's really powerful because that's often not only but thought of as maybe a more feminine energy that you were also bringing into like the leadership landscape where you were. I love this, that you followed that intuition or that calling to really do the yoga full time, gave it a fair shot, and then decided when it wasn't working, and then moved back into a more corporate space. Like, this is what I find so powerful because you have that healer energy. You have that energy of someone who's really here to do good and to create like positive impact. And you're doing it in a corporate setting. And I know that you're not in the corporate world right now. You're in the startup world, but well, you're in many worlds to be honest, but I think that there's this belief that we're supposed to choose one or the other. I know I've certainly had that myself. It's like you're either a healer or you're a businesswoman, and like for some reason there's no overlap. And I feel like you're also just pioneering that there is that you can do that.
Absolutely. And I've worked with a lot of boards of publicly listed companies whilst I've been in startup world. And again, it's not something I've promoted, to really use mindfulness as a tool to drive elevated levels of performance. I love, and I've done sort of like 2-day workshops with boards predominantly full of skeptics. So it's been one person that sponsored me into a board, which is typically all male, not all male, but at least 75%, going into this very skeptical room, and, God, it's a waste of my time and da 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 da, to really just even seeing the impact on people's faces from when they just arrived in the room to, even at lunchtime, just to see sort of, some of the stress starting to melt away, the shoulders dropping a little bit. And I think that's the uniqueness that I bring, is that, I have sat in their shoes before. I've worked at board level. Worked for some of the biggest companies in the world. So when I deliver sort of boardroom workshops, it's very much in a sort of just enough way. So easing them in gently, so that I'm not necessarily deemed as being, this woo-woo kind of person. And who are you? I look like them. I, dress to a degree like them. So I can be quite corporate, sort of integrate that into them to help, improve their performance, but also their well-being. But then the knock-on effect that then has on their teams, and on the people in their broader lives is quite phenomenal. So that's something I enjoy doing as well.
I mean, just listening to you talk, my next question is like, why don't you advertise that? Like, I'm listening to you, I'm like, well, this feels like a gift that you have that is extremely valuable to many.
I mean, when I started doing this, this was very much in the early days, so back in 2018, and this was when wellness wasn't really well established, in companies. It was all about who can work the longest and the hardest, and who's on email at 10 p.m. and then again at 6 p.m. in the morning. And so society has evolved. Being an entrepreneur and a business person, you also have to be careful. You can't be all things to all people all of the time, because then it dilutes your overarching sort of message and USP. So I think, I've decided to focus on, Women in Tech Forum, Women Leaders Forum, another business that I have as well at Restart in Tech. And, I think sometimes the opportunities do just arrive. And if you dig deep enough on our website, there is an 8-part mindfulness course on there as well, which I absolutely love delivering. So I had a lot of clients go through that. So I think it's, maybe something for the future. I am starting to teach yoga again as well. I have a milestone birthday coming up in a year. And that is one of the things on my list. And I'm a kind of person, as soon as I write something down on the list or share it with somebody, then it's like, oh, great. Yeah, great. Well, we've got this space here, and we've got this space here.
So what I'm hearing between the lines is that you are a magnificent manifester. Can you tell us all how to make that list? Because I think everyone listening would want to know how to do that.
So I think, first of all, you have to write your list as well. So because a lot of us have lots of great ideas that are going around in our head. So I think the first thing to do is to actually get them down on paper, and then really look at, what does that mean to you? Do you really want it, first of all? What does it look like? So I think you really have to sort of visualize yourself. Just a random story. In the interest of sharing, I moved to Singapore in August of 2005. My goal before I went was I want to move to Sydney, Australia by August 2007. I'd been on a couple of business trips to Sydney. Oh yeah. So no, when I moved in 2005, I'd never been to Sydney. So I made sure my first business trip, because I had to travel all over Asia all of the time. So my first trip was to Sydney. And then I met the then COO and said, my goal is to move to Sydney in the next couple of years. So it was the first thing I said. He then became the CEO for APAC, which is great. I visited all the places I wanted to go. I took pictures and actually printed them out back then, and had them in my bedroom. It's the first thing I looked at when I woke up in the morning. It's the last thing I looked at when I went to sleep. And 2 years, pretty much to the day, or certainly week, I was on a plane to Sydney, where I stayed for the next 4 years. I think you really have to believe it as well. A lot of the time, when we look at manifesting our dreams, we may not necessarily believe it fully internally. There may be some blockages. So I think, really embracing your vision, your manifestation, what you want to achieve, but also taking action as well. You can't in my opinion, you can't really manifest a dream without taking meaningful action. So what are the small, first journey steps, second journey steps that you can take in order to reach your goal? And I use this in coaching as well. I have a whole sort of methodology to help clients, take control of their career, manifest their role and their pay of their dreams. In fact, I've got a session on this tomorrow with Women Leaders Forum, session number 2. So I think there's a lot of things, but you have to get your internal and external system aligned to your goal. It's not just external. You really need to think about yourself as well.
Okay, so you do have your coaching advertised, right? Because someone's going to listen and go, oh, wait, she knows how to help me get my career. But I think what you're saying is really important, just that because there's a lot of goals. First of all, you've shared that you can't be everything to everyone. So there's really something powerful about narrowing that focus and getting clear, whether that's in your work, in your life, in the things that you want, or the kind of business that you're running. So you're getting that clarity. And then especially when it comes to things you just want to create or the way you want to see your life, writing it down and starting to allow yourself to believe that this could be possible.
Absolutely. And I also think that, we need to look at what sacrifices am I willing to make in order to achieve this goal? Or what things no longer serve me? What am I willing to let go of? A strange thing at the weekend, I cleared out my wardrobe. Why did I do that? I wanted to let go of some clothes so I could buy some new ones.
That's a good nudge. I've been sitting on that one for a few weeks.
Absolutely, because there isn't anywhere else for any new clothes to go. So I was quite brutal with my wardrobe. And I thought the more brutal I would be, the more clothes I could buy.
Well, it's really the perfect metaphor, honestly. It's like, what do you need to get rid of? What beliefs, what, behaviors, patterns, relationships, like business relationships that really aren't serving you, so that you actually have the space for the things that you want to be able to come in. I feel I've really been going through a cleansing process like that myself, just with, it's been a bit hard, but now I feel like it's like a little bit of an addiction. I'm getting really used to being like, no, I don't want this, and this is done, and we're ending that now. And I'm like, okay, are you just trying to get rid of everything, or is this still, But it really feels aligned to let go of so many things that are not really fitting. And it's not even because they won't come back again or won't fit later. It's just for me to be able to see clearly and really stay focused on what matters to me right now. I have way too much noise in the system. And so I'm really like, that's been a huge focus. So the closet metaphor really is a perfect illustration of exactly that. Like, my closet is like overflowing right now. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay.
Absolutely. And also I think having a clean, tidy, organized space also indicates an organized mind. And, we've just moved our podcast from a room upstairs to down here, which is much more tidy and organized, whereas my desk was actually quite messy, which is indicative of I've got messy thoughts for work, and therefore my space is messy. So I think, those small acts of just organizing things, putting things in order, you're also creating the mindset and the tools and the systems to manifest.
I know that we brushed a little bit on the healing sessions that you also offer. It's not that you're advertising that, but people do come in, and I think most people listening to the podcast really do have that understanding of how things come into our life. What's some of the healing, if you can share, maybe that you've seen, like if there's a result or some kind of transformation that you'd be able to share just to have an idea of what your work looks like in the world?
So I think, first of all, to undergo any form of healing, you have to be really open to it. And also your spirit, your sort of higher self will guide whether that healing is appropriate for you in this moment or not. With theta healing, it's not me doing the healing. We use a much bigger energy, creator's energy, whatever creator means to you. It's almost like if you imagine a tree with all of its branches, some form of healing or therapy might look at the individual branches and sort of, solve those problems or help heal. But with theta, we really look at the root cause of the healing, which may be from this lifetime. It may be ancestral. And so with theta healing, it really gets to the root cause and then heals from there, so that all of the branches will also heal as well. It can be quite not traumatic, but a lot sort of releasing things that's just sort of held in the body. And sort of releasing that can be very freeing, very empowering. I did how many years of training? Maybe 2 years of training before I started practicing. And it was just transformational for me as well. The positive impact it had on my life was huge, and also with all the people I studied with as well, to see the transformations and also the trauma, some of which they were aware of, some of which they weren't, just be sort of healed over time was incredible.
Well, I know you had introduced me, it must be at least half a year ago. I had asked you for a recommendation, and you gave me the name of a woman who supported me. I think we had a few sessions together, but oh my God, it really was. Yeah. So I think part of that gift, it's not necessarily you also having to do that healing, but also helping. Like, I guess that's a big piece of all the work you do, is helping bridge and give connections and open up those doorways, because that healing that I had was, yeah, really phenomenal. It really cleared away things that had been sitting so stagnant and stuck that I couldn't quite figure out for so long.
Absolutely. And any sort of energy blockages that you have in your body or in your chakras, once you sort of remove that blocked energy, it allows things to flow freely, and also to connect with your intuition as well. I do think intuition is really important in business and in life, and oftentimes we ignore our intuition, because particularly if we're much more sort of scientific and rational in our approach. If we can't explain something, we often dismiss it, but sometimes those are the little nudges from somewhere. Yeah, it recommends people they listen to their intuition, even if they don't know why at the time. It will become clearer later.
We're coming close to the end of our conversation, although I wish we had like part 2 and 3 already lined up. But before I ask some just closing questions, because people who are listening who might be interested to join either Women in Tech Forum or the Women Leaders Forum, or you also said there's a third, which is Restart in Tech. Did I get that right?
Yes, for career returners.
For career returners, this is like after maternity leave or after a period of pause?
Yeah, after a period of pause, male
Mm-hmm.
and female,
Okay.
non-binary. If you take a career break for a year, 2 years, 5 years, or longer,
Mm-hmm.
helping them get back to the workforce and
Mm.
connecting with employers.
So how can people find out more if they want to join any one of your beautiful communities?
Please do connect with me on LinkedIn, Angie Vaux, VAUX. Yeah, have a look at our website, womenintechforum.com, womenleadersforum.com, restartintechforum.com.
Right.
So actually, no, it's restartintech.com.
Okay. I'll post it in the show notes, so don't worry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so always happy to have a chat as well. People want to find out what course of action is best for them. Very happy to have a chemistry call.
I would just love to ask you if there's someone who is maybe just starting out on their journey and they're just beginning to explore what is possible for them, is there any advice, maybe even something you wish you would have known when you were starting your own career and journey? Is there any advice or words of wisdom you might be willing to impart?
I think be bold. Reach for the stars. Oftentimes we sort of try and constrain our vision. We may not have confidence in ourselves, but it's meant to feel uncomfortable when we're doing something different, because that's where the growth and the learning happens. So embrace the discomfort and push forward. And don't be afraid to use your network as well. There are so many people around you who are happy to give advice, insights, act as a sounding board. So surround yourself with amazing people and your cheerleaders who are really going to support you on your journey, and just go for it. Don't overthink it. Sometimes we get so caught up in the detail. Sometimes you just need to try it and then build from there.
And clean out your closet. No. Angie, it has been so wonderful to have you here to share, a lot of this community building and work you're doing with women, and also the healing side of the work that you do, which is ingrained in all. I'm so appreciative that you could be here with us today.
Thank you so much. It's great chatting with you. And I love all the work that you're doing as well, and the energy and excitement that you bring. So thank you for having me as your guest.
Thank you. And to everyone who's listening, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Don't Step on the Bluebells. If you enjoyed this conversation, please give the podcast a 5-star rating wherever you listen. And don't forget to hit subscribe and follow along so you never miss a new episode.